Hey everyone, it's LifeFest again, and this is our next episode of the beloved format 100 Days on Hardcore. In the previous videos, we experienced the ups and downs together as our heroes survived in the world of Sims 4, striving for their goals. But today, I have something special for you. This time, I decided to try a new format and tell the story from a first-person perspective. This will be a more personal and in-depth dive into hardcore mode, where every step and every decision will matter. I'll share my thoughts, feelings, and emotions with you, and we'll go through all of this together. But that's not all. I'll be describing each day, every challenge I face, so you can literally follow my progress in real time. This is truly going to be an absolutely incredible and undoubtedly amazing journey from absolute zero to ultimate success, with all the ups, downs, and unexpected twists and turns along the way. So please do not forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the bell so you won't miss a single day of this exciting adventure. Together we'll find out what it means to live life to the fullest in hardcore mode. Are you ready? Then, let's go! I'm Mia Spencer, I'm 28 years old, and I'm an artist who, according to many, hasn't quite made it. My days are spent in the workplace environment, where instead of holding brushes, I stamp documents, send them to the archive, and sometimes sit within four walls under the peaceful and rhythmic hum of the printer. And occasionally, in my youth, I believed that my life would be different, that I would create, make art, and live for my passion. But reality, as it often is, turned out to be harsher than my dreams. Every morning when I open my eyes, I feel emptiness. Not the kind that comes from lack of sleep or a bad mood, but the kind that eats you from the inside. It feels like you're living someone else's life, doing something that's not yours, taking away precious time from yourself. I used to think this was temporary. Everything would change soon, I just needed to wait a little longer. But the days kept passing, and I was sinking deeper into the routine. Sometimes I look at my brushes in a box, symbolizing missed chances. They remind me of who I could have been, but fear overpowers desire. They remind me of who I could be. But fear has always been stronger than my desire. Today, when I woke up, I realized that this can't go on any longer. I no longer want to settle for less. I don't want to feel unhappy. I have 100 days to change my life. It is exactly 100 days until I can finally leave this stuffy, cramped office environment and never have to come back again. In these 100 days, I have the opportunity to start living my life for real, to pursue my dream with passion and... Sounds crazy, right? Maybe... But I really feel like I have no other choice. Either I try now, or I truly accept the thought that I've indeed missed my only chance. I can't actually afford to let it slip away. Not this time. I want to start from scratch, leave everything behind. Fears, insecurities, the infamous stability that pulls me down. Let me fail, let me make mistakes and learn from them. Let me navigate through fire and water, but I will do it. I have to do this for myself, for my dreams, and for that part of me that still believes in miracles and emerge stronger. So I have 100 days to find myself and my path and my journey. I have no money, no support, and no clear plan, and no direction or purpose. There's just this desire that I can no longer ignore. Let the world try to stop me. I'm ready for this challenge. Day 1. I'm standing in the middle of an empty plot of land and I still can't believe this is really happening. This is my start, my chance to begin everything from scratch. When I look around, I see only bare land, a bit of grass, and a whole lot of possibilities. No home, no studio, not even the slightest hint of comfort. Just a lonely tree at the edge of the lot and $1,000 in my pocket. I inherited this small piece of plot from my grandmother. She lived in this small town, somewhere on the outskirts of civilization. I haven't been here in a long time and I almost forgot it existed. When I got the letter from the lawyer, I didn't think much of it at first. An old abandoned piece of land. But then it hit me. This could be the very place where I start a new life. I sold all my things and belongings in the bustling city, leaving only my cherished brushes, vibrant paints, and a few other essential items. That's how I ended up with the $1,000 that I brought with me. I realized that I have very little time and resources, so I need to act quickly. The first thing I decided to do was explore the land to understand what exactly I would be working with. The land turned out to be pretty good, although a bit overgrown. There are no extra trees except for one on the edge, which is actually for the best. Less work. Now I need to figure out how to use this $1,000 wisely. Building a house is still out of reach, but I need at least the basic conditions for living and working. I went to the city and bought a tent. There isn't much money left, but it was enough for food for the next few days and a few packets of seeds. I thought I could grow my own vegetables, at least to save some money. When I got back to the plot, I started by setting up the tent. It looks pitiful in the middle of the empty space, but at least it's something. Then I cleared a small patch of land for the garden. For now, it's just a few square meters, but I believe I can expand it when everything gets better. As I planted the seeds, I thought about how quickly things had changed. Just yesterday, I woke up in my rented apartment surrounded by dreary walls and worries that pulled me down, and today I am here among nature with my dreams and hopes. I know there are many challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm on the right path. By evening, I was exhausted, forced myself to have a simple sandwich for dinner, and crawled into my sleeping bag. The wind whispers in the aftermath, and I hear birds calling somewhere in the distance. Despite the fatigue, I feel an extraordinary sense of calm. This first day has passed, and even though nothing is visible yet, I know this is just the beginning. I took the first step, tomorrow will be the second. Day 2. I woke up to the first rays of sunlight breaking through the thin fabric of the tent. Sleeping on the ground turned out to be not so scary, but now my whole body aches like after a tough workout. And yet, despite the comfort, there's a strange feeling of satisfaction within me. I can't remember the last time I woke up feeling like the day would be meaningful. Today I needed to figure out how to set up this place, at least minimally. I guess I should start with the essentials, setting up my workspace. I'm an artist, and if I want to move towards my goals, I need a place to work. Of course, I can only dream of a full-fledged studio for now, but I can start small. I looked into my pocket and counted the remaining money. After yesterday's shopping, there's not very much left, but if I'm careful, it should last me a few days. I needed to find a bit of cheap materials to build at least a simple shelter to protect myself and my work from the bad weather. The weather was clear today, but I knew it could change at any moment. In the city, I stumbled upon a small hardware store that sold used materials at low prices. I found a few old sheets of plywood, some boards, and a tarp. All of this cost me next to nothing. The seller, an elderly man, looked at me with interest as I explained why I needed these things. He seemed surprised that I wanted to create something with such limited resources, but he still wished me luck as I was leaving. Back at the site, I immediately got to work. I'm not a builder, but at least I could handle tools. I built a small shelter from plywood and a tarp in a few hours. It wasn't perfect, but it was good enough to protect from wind and rain a little. The simple shelter symbolized progress, my first step towards making this plot a home. The shelter turned out simple, but for me it was a symbol of progress, the first step towards turning this empty plot into a place I could call home. After lunch, I started thinking about how to make my first money. My 1,000 was quickly dwindling, and I needed to come up with a way to replenish my funds. I had with me some of my old works and large sketches that I usually considered too simple to sell, but right now any source of income was important. I decided to try selling them online through social media, where I had a small but active audience. I took a few photos and posted them with a brief description. In the evening, just as I was getting ready to wrap up my day, my phone vibrated. A few people showed interest in my work. It was a small but important success. Maybe their interest will lead to my first sales. Even tiny steps can lead to big changes. As the sun began to set, I felt tired once more. Again, I sat under my brand new shelter and looked at my tools, on the tent and on the tiny garden. For now, that's all I have. But it's so much more than I had yesterday. Today I'm going to take another step forward. Maybe it's small, but it's important. I'm starting to realize that moving forward isn't a leap over a chasm, but a gradual climb up a long staircase. Tomorrow will be a new day, and I'm ready for it. The third day, I woke up with the first rays of the sun, feeling a slight ache in my muscles. It's not surprising. After 2 days of physical work, I'm not used to such strain at all. But despite the fatigue, there was a spark of satisfaction glowing in my chest. There's definitely something special about doing things with your own hands, building your life literally from scratch. Today I decided to dedicate the day to two tasks: creating the first complete painting on this property and developing my garden. Yesterday's interest in my old works gave me hope that I could earn from my creativity even in such harsh conditions. To start, I measured out a small patch of land next to the tent to plant a few more seeds. I needed to lay the initial groundwork and secure the foundation for what could later become my main source of food in the future. The seeds I planted were simple: tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. I knew it would take time for the harvest, but it was another step towards independence. After that, I decided to create my first painting while I was here. The inspiration came unexpectedly. My gaze stopped on the one lonely tree that grew at the edge of the property. It seemed so lonely and yet so strong, as if it symbolized my current state. I decided that this painting would be the start of a new series, where I would capture every day and every important moment of my new journey. Having laid out my paints and canvas, I began to work. It was incredibly pleasant to create in the fresh air, even though I had to fight against the gusts of wind that kept trying to blow the canvas away. I haven't felt such unity with nature, such immersion in the process in a long time. There were no distracting factors here. It was just me, my thoughts, and that tree, which was becoming more and more alive on the canvas. The work took up most of the day. I wasn't in a hurry. Every detail, every brushstroke has to be special. The idea was not just to create a painting, but to put everything I was feeling into it. The feeling of freedom, the joy of finally living my life. Well, there was fear and loneliness that I couldn't completely shake off. By evening, I finally finished. The painting turned out simple, but there was something alive in it, something real. It wasn't just an illustration, but an expression of my inner world. I took a photo of it and immediately posted it on social media. Now just wait for a response. I hope someone will feel the same way as me, and want to buy it. As darkness fell, I felt the fatigue gradually taking over. Body again. Today was a productive day and it was satisfying. I didn't have confidence in tomorrow, but at least I knew I was doing everything I could. After finishing the day, I settled under my awning with a mug of hot tea, feeling the shadows of the night closing in around me. I looked at the painting again. My first creation in this new place wasn't just a canvas with paint, it was a reflection of myself. I was as lonely as that tree, but I knew that if I kept moving forward, the roots of my efforts would grow stronger and the branches of my achievements would spread wider. Today confirmed that I'm on the right track. Tomorrow is a new step, a new opportunity, and I'm ready to meet it with an open heart. The fourth day, this time I woke up even before sunrise. At night, the rain came and its rhythmic drumming on the makeshift awning acted like a hypnotic spell. At one point, I even had to go out and check if my little garden had flooded. Fortunately, the rain wasn't too heavy, but the ground was now damp and rich. That meant I needed to catch the plant's attention today. As soon as dawn broke, I crawled out of the tent, throwing on an old jacket to shield myself from the morning chill. I had a strange feeling that something important was going to happen today. I guess it's the anticipation of the results from yesterday. Will the first painting find its buyer? But before checking my social media, I headed to the garden. My seedlings looked pretty healthy, and it even seemed like they had grown a bit overnight. I decided to add a few more seeds so that later I would have a more diverse harvest. Working with the soil unexpectedly brought me joy. In every seed I planted, there was a piece of hope for the future. And every new sprout strengthened my confidence that I was on the right path. When I finished working in the garden, I returned to my makeshift awning and finally decided to check my messages. My heart raced as I opened the app, and then one notification immediately and unexpectedly caught my attention. Someone was very much interested in my painting and opened the message. Indeed, it was a young woman living in a neighboring town who wrote that the painting reminded her very much of the home where she indeed grew up. She wanted to buy it. I didn't even expect such a quick response. It was the first time someone wanted to buy my work so quickly, and it gave me a new burst of energy. We agreed to meet in the city the next day so I could hand over the painting in person. It wasn't just about making money, it was a sign that I could actually make a living from my art, even here in this empty space. Feeling inspired, I decided to use this day to further improve my space. I went to the city to buy a few more things I needed. With the money I'll get tomorrow, I'll be able to afford a little more, but for now, I've only bought the essentials. A small table and a chair outside. It's important, the simplest furniture, but it will significantly improve my working conditions. I also bought some candles to light up the tent in the evenings. I sat with my purchases at the new table. My space was forming. It was simple but reliable, and there was a charm in that. I felt how my small territory was gradually beginning to take shape. It's no longer just an empty piece of land. It's truly a place that I'm turning into my sanctuary, my home. I spent the rest of the day sketching, trying to capture my thoughts and feelings on paper. I wanted to create something special, something that would continue the story I started yesterday with the tree. This time I decided to paint myself standing in the middle of this new life, surrounded by emptiness but full of determination. It wouldn't just be a self-portrait, it would be a symbol of my journey and the transformation I'm going through. By evening when I finished, the sun had already started to set behind the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange. I was happy with the result, but I felt like it was just the beginning of something bigger. Maybe these drawings will someday come together into a whole series of works that tell the story of my survival, growth, and ultimate transformation. Another important day, my efforts started to bear fruit, and that inspired me to keep going. Tomorrow, I'll deliver my first painting and take another step toward my goal. And even though there are still many challenges ahead, I feel like I'm on the right path, and that gives me the strength to keep going. 5th day, I woke up to the sound of my own alarm clock, which I set on my phone. Today was an important day, and even though I hadn't fully woken up yet, thoughts of the upcoming meeting with the buyer of my painting kept me from lying still. When I finally got up and made myself a quick breakfast from simple groceries I bought at the store, I felt a wave of excitement and anticipation. I gathered the painting, carefully wrapped in old plastic, and headed into the city. I really tried not to think about what could possibly go wrong, and instead focused on the fact that this was my very first step toward turning my passion into a reliable source of income. I met the buyer at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. She turned out to be a very nice middle-aged woman with warm eyes and a genuine smile. We talked a bit about the painting and how she found it. It was really nice to know that my work could evoke such feelings in people. I noticed how her eyes lit up when she liked it. It felt like a little magic to see my work finding its place in the lives of other people. She paid me in cash, and I was amazed at how nice it felt to hold that money in my hands. They symbolized not just earnings, but the first fruits of my efforts. We said our goodbyes, and I returned to my place feeling satisfied, joyful, and proud. On the way back, I decided to use the leftover money to take a small step toward improving my living space. At the hardware store, I bought some various types of wooden boards and different kinds of nails to reinforce my shed and other materials that I needed. I also got a few more basic gardening tools that will help me take better care of the garden, to ensure better maintenance of my beautiful garden. When I got back, I immediately got to work. I reinforced the shed by adding a few new boards and securing it to make it more stable. Throughout the day, I also made sure to check on the garden and ensure that all the plants were getting enough water and nutrients. I even decided to add a few more seeds to diversify my future harvest. After working in the garden, I got started on my next task, creating a new painting. This piece was truly especially important to me because I wanted to create something that absolutely reflected my feelings from a recent experience. I decided to depict the morning landscape I saw when I first arrived at the plot. It was something enchanting, as if every element of nature was like inspiration and hope. In the evening I was tired but satisfied. I did everything I could, and even more. Every day, I'm becoming more confident in my abilities. This plot is starting to transform from an empty space into a living area where I can work and create. Today, I felt like I took another step toward my dream. I managed to sell my first painting, improve my living conditions, and keep working on a new piece. Every day, I'm getting a little closer to my goal, and that gives me strength and confidence. Tomorrow, I plan to have another meeting to sell my second painting as well as continue working on the garden and my new piece. And even though the journey is still far from over, I believe that with each new step, I'm getting closer to my goal. Today was yet another proof that I can handle challenges and keep moving forward. Day 6. Today I woke up to the rays of the sun shining through the fabric of the tent, and I immediately felt that it was going to be a busy day. My new painting, which I finished yesterday, was ready for sale, and I decided to post it on social media, just like the previous one. I hope this piece finds its audience. First of all, I got to work on the garden. The seeds I planted a few days ago have started to sprout, and that made me really happy. I carefully weeded the beds and watered the plants. I started to see the first signs of life on Earth, and it was incredibly inspiring. Even if my results are still modest, it was a sign that my efforts are not in vain. After I finished in the garden, I started working on a new painting. I wanted to create something that reflected my inner world and journey I've been on. I decided to paint a small series of artworks that will tell the story of my new beginning. Today, I focused on capturing my plot, where the first signs of life have already started to appear. The middle of the day was dedicated to buying materials for my ongoing work. I went to the local market and bought several more items to set up my space. This time, I bought an old cabinet that, although it was slightly scratched, could serve for storing my art supplies. I also bought a few boxes and a few more to organize my tools and materials. Returning to the plot was a real challenge. I was tired but satisfied that I managed to get everything I needed. Before I started unloading things from the truck, I decided to check my social media. To my surprise, there were already a few responses to my new painting. It was encouraging, and I saw it as a good sign. After I arranged my purchases on the plot, I decided to spend the rest of the day working on the painting and setting up my space. The cabinet, even though it was a bit old, was perfect for storing my materials. I spent some time organizing everything on the shelves, and it created a nice order in my workspace. As the sun began to set, I took some time to add the finishing touches to the painting. I felt how this work was gradually becoming a part of me, reflecting all the experiences and joy I feel in this new beginning. With each stroke, I felt my thoughts and emotions finding their way onto the canvas. In the evening, I decided to take a break and enjoy the moment. I sat under the awning with a cup of tea and looked at my plot. This place, which once seemed completely empty and lifeless, now began to take shape. With its coziness and simplicity, it was becoming the place where I could create and dream. Today was another day filled with work and achievements. I saw the first results of my work, started setting up my space, and kept working on my paintings. Every step, no matter how small, brings me closer to my goal. Tomorrow, I plan to continue working on new paintings and maybe meet with potential buyers. And even though the road is still long, I feel like I'm doing everything I can to achieve my dreams. 7th, I woke up when the sun had just started to warm the ground. I stretched, feeling a pleasant tiredness from the previous days. It seems like I'm starting to get used to the new rhythm of life, and it's bringing me joy. For breakfast, I decided to have some vegetables from my garden. It was the first time I was able to use my own produce, and the feeling was unusually joyful. After breakfast, I got back to the garden. The plants weren't growing quickly, but there were already signs of their development. I was watering, loosening the soil, and making sure not to miss any details. The garden has become something like a living project for me, requiring constant care and attention. It was nice and calming to see each plant gradually getting stronger. After lunch, I decided to dedicate some time to my creativity. The painting I posted on social media sparked interest, and a few people expressed a desire to meet and discuss a purchase. I arranged a meeting with potential buyers, and that inspired me to work on my next paintings. This time, I decided to focus on creating pieces that could complement the works I had already displayed. I kept painting landscapes and scenes that reflected my experiences, but I tried to add more details and emotions to them. The work was going well, and each new painting became a reflection of my inner world, which was gradually taking shape. By noon, I managed to finish 2 paintings, and I got ready for the meeting. This was an exciting part of the day, as I didn't know how the buyers would react. I carefully packed the artworks and headed to the city. When I met with the buyers, I was pleasantly surprised by how genuinely interested they were in my works. We talked not only about the paintings, but also about my life here in this new place. They asked questions, showed genuine interest in the creative process, and even shared ideas for possible improvements. I felt like I was starting to find my audience and that my art was resonating with people. By evening, when I returned to the plot, I saw that the remaining paintings had also caught some attention. There were a few inquiries about purchases, and that made me happy again. Each piece of art became a part of the story I was telling through my work. Today was a day filled with meetings and new opportunities. My garden kept growing, and I was working on new paintings and found new buyers. This day was another step towards building a full life in this new place. While I was preparing dinner, I was thinking about how much I had managed to achieve this week. It was a day full of work and discoveries, and I feel like I'm gradually getting into the right groove. Tomorrow I plan to keep working on new paintings and improve the garden. I'm sure there are still many challenges ahead, but every step, no matter how small, brings me closer to my goal. 8th, 9th day. The following days blended into one long process of work and adapting to a new way of life. I've already developed a certain rhythm. Morning started with taking care of the garden, then I spent time painting, and I spent my evenings setting up my plot. Every morning greeted me with new challenges, but gradually I became more and more confident in what I was doing. Day 11-12. These days have become important for my art. I started getting orders, and I even thought about expanding my audience. I was exploring how to make my art accessible to people beyond the local community. In my free time, I was updating the shed and the space around it, trying to make the plot cozier. 13th, 15th day. One of the main achievements was setting up a simple wooden cabin on the plot. I invested most of the money I earned into buying materials and started building. It was a small but warm and sturdy little house that allowed me to no longer depend on the tent and not fear sudden rain. Building took a lot of effort, but every board, every hammer was a step towards my dream of a stable home. Day 16 and 17. These 2 days were special for me. My new home, though small, was finally finished. It was a simple wooden structure without any frills, but it had everything I needed for living. A small room with a bed, a modest kitchen, and a place to store all my things and materials for creating. This whole building process was incredibly meaningful to me. Every board, every nail is the result of my labors over the past weeks. Now I have a real shelter, and I no longer have to hide in a tent from the cold and rain. I was proud of myself because this house became a symbol of how far I had come. Despite its simplicity, this place started to fill with warmth and coziness. I put some of my paintings on the shelves, made a wooden table for working, and hung up some old curtains I found at the market. Now it was not just a shelter, but a place I could call my home. Over these 2 days, I was working on little details, decorating the walls, adding shelves for storing food and materials, and improving the lighting. The house, though small, gave a sense of stability and coziness. I could work peacefully, cook for myself, and sleep without worrying about the weather and other inconveniences. Now that I had my own little corner, I could spend more time on creativity and plan my next steps. I still had tasks to improve the garden, continue selling my paintings, and maybe gradually make the little house even better. But now that the foundation has been laid, I felt ready for further achievements. Day 18. Day 18. Today, for the first time in a long while, I woke up in a real bed in my own home. It may seem like such a small thing, but how important it is. Just lying on a soft mattress covered with a warm blanket, feeling safe and cozy and secure. The morning rays of the sun were shining through the curtain, and it was the best wake-up I've had in the past few weeks. I stretched, enjoying the silence and the view of my new home, and realized how much had changed in these days. As usual, I started the day by working in the garden. The plants that I had worked so hard to grow continued to thrive and brought me joy with their little victories. The garden has become something like meditation for me. Every day I took care of it, and it not only gives me fresh vegetables as a result, but also peace of mind. After the garden, I got to work on my creative projects. 2 new paintings that I recently finished were already waiting for their buyers. A few people responded on social media, and I arranged a meeting. Selling paintings became routine. Each sale brought joy, not just for money, but as confirmation my work resonated. Each deal brought joy, not just for money, but as confirmation people liked my work. His name was Mike, and he immediately caught my attention with his ease and openness. Tall, with slightly tousled hair and a casual style, in his clothes, he smiled as if he knew something that others didn't. We started by discussing the painting. He liked it for its calm and warm tones, which, according to him, reminded him of his trip to the mountains. But the conversation quickly shifted from art to something more personal. Mike turned out to be an architect, and we suddenly found ourselves talking about construction. He even gave me some useful tips on how to improve my little house. The conversation flowed. He asked about my project and lifestyle. After business, Mike suggested a walk to the bar. He was curious, asked a lot of questions about my project, about how I decided to live this way, and seemed genuinely interested in my experience. When we finished with business, Mike suggested we take a walk to the nearest bar. It was unexpectedly nice. We wandered through the winding alleys, discussing everything from travel to our favorite books and movies. At one point, I caught myself thinking that I hadn't felt so light and free around someone in a long time. He had that rare ability to create an atmosphere where you could just be yourself without trying to impress anyone. When we said goodbye, he mentioned that he would like to see my work again and maybe even come to check out my little house. I smiled and agreed, feeling a slight thrill. Maybe it's just a nice acquaintance, but something about him made me hope that this wouldn't be the last time we saw each other. Day 19 and 20. These 2 days went by almost in a normal rhythm, but my thoughts weren't as calm as they used to be. In the morning, I was in the garden as usual, and the plants continued to delight me with their growth, bringing me the familiar satisfaction. I was busy, but kept thinking about my meeting with Michael. His friendliness left me warm, as if meeting someone I'd like to know better. I hoped he'd call. His ease and genuine friendliness left me with a truly warm feeling, as if I had indeed met not just a buyer, but someone I would really like to get to know better. I was thinking about how great it would be if he called. I just said a few words, suggested we meet to discuss my work or something else, but the phone was silent, and I found myself checking it more and more often, catching myself thinking that every message or call sparked a flicker of hope, but it was just work notifications or reminders about tasks. In the afternoon, while going through my usual routine, I kept carefully listening for sounds around me, hoping that I had missed his call somewhere. Maybe I just didn't hear it. I checked for missed calls and nothing. A lot of scenarios were spinning in my head. Maybe he's busy, or he forgot, or he just changed his mind. Or maybe I should write to him myself. But I stopped myself, realizing that I didn't want to come off as pushy. By the evening of the 20th, I was already tired of these thoughts. I lay down in my bed, feeling the phone back in my hands again. Just a habit of checking one more time before bed. Well, this time nothing. The phone kept silent, and I, tired from my own expectations, didn't even notice when I fell asleep, clutching it in my hands. Day 21. In the morning, I woke up, and of course, the first thing I did was check my phone. Nothing. It was still silent. I sighed, set it aside. I'm trying to convince myself it's time to let go of these thoughts and return to my routine. The garden, painting, now cleaning the house. All of this required time and attention. Productive day. Evening meetings revived expectations. Especially when I looked at my phone, I tried to distract, focus on work, but as the evening came, when I met with the buyers of my paintings again, those expectations came back. After finishing the deal, I headed home. I was lost in my thoughts when I suddenly heard a man's voice behind me. I froze in place from surprise, even feeling a bit scared. My heart stopped for a moment, and then it started racing. Turning around, I saw Mike. He was standing a few steps away from me with that same light smile that I liked so much when we first met. Sorry I didn't call. The beginning, I was busy, but all this time I was thinking about you. I didn't know if I should be the one to write first. Now I've seen you. I'm glad I decided to come over. I was a bit taken aback, not immediately knowing what to say. His words about thinking of me too warmed my heart. Mike took a few steps closer. Listen, he continued, I still want to see your little house and your space. You spoke so passionately that I'm really interested. Maybe you could show it to me today. If you don't mind, of course. His suggestion came as a surprise, but at the same time it felt so natural. I smiled in response, feeling all the worries of the past few days fade away. We were walking along the path to my house, and Mike kept looking around as if trying to soak in every detail. When we finally reached my place, he stopped, taking in the little house, the garden, and the small creative projects I used for decoration. This impresses me, he said with a broad smile. Starting from scratch, you did an incredible job. You can tell that there's a lot of heart put into this. I felt shy, but it was nice to hear those words. He walked up to the house and gently touched one of the wooden walls. Did you build all of this yourself? He asked, looking closely at the details. Yeah, I did it all myself. Although it wasn't that hard once you get into the process, I replied, holding back a smile. Mike paused for a moment, then turned to me with a serious look. Listen, I have an idea. As you know, I'm an architect, and I truly really like what you've done. You have an incredible, remarkable sense of space and beauty. What do you think about us joining forces? I'll help you improve this house, make it more functional and comfortable. And you in turn could help me with the creative part of one of my new projects. I need someone who sees the world with the same creative perspective as you do. That suggestion caught me off guard. I never thought anyone would offer me to work together, especially an architect. That was an interesting turn of events. What do you say? We could create something really cool. Your work is inspiring, Mike added, raising his eyebrows, waiting for my response. I paused for a second, feeling a rush of excitement inside me from his words. It felt like something incredible, but also very tempting. I stood there processing his words, and I couldn't believe that Mike had offered me something like that. Join forces. I never even thought that I could be useful in any architectural project. Especially since he saw in me not just an artist but also a potential partner for creative work. That sounds really interesting. Finally I spoke. I feel a little nervous. I honestly never thought my skills could be useful in something like that. But why? Tell me more about the project. Mike, pleased with my interest, took a couple of steps toward the house and sat down on a small bench next to the garden. I joined him, and he started to tell me. It turned out that he was working on a project for an eco-village outside the city. He needed to design a few houses with minimal impact on nature, while still making them stylish and cozy. I need to add something unconventional that could inspire future residents. It shouldn't just be a house, but a place where people will feel like part of nature, he explained. And with your experience in creating a cozy corner from scratch, you could suggest something unusual, something I might not see. We talked until the evening. I shared my ideas, showing him my work and talking about what comfort in a space means to me. He listened attentively, adding comments and suggestions, and I felt that we could really create something interesting together. At some point, I realized that I had stopped feeling anxious, and the conversation with Mike became natural and enjoyable. As it started to get dark, Mike stood up, stretched, smiled, and said, "Thank you for this day, Mia. I'm glad I decided to approach you. Let's continue this discussion in the coming days. I can already see how much we can do together." "Thank you," I replied, smiling back.
You inspired me too.
I'll be looking forward to continuing it. We said our goodbyes, and Mike slowly walked towards the city. I watched him go, feeling that this day had changed something important in my life. I walked into the house, realizing that the offer to work with Mike could open new horizons for me. The phone was silent again, but I wasn't worried about it anymore. Day 22. The morning started like usual, with the sun's rays streaming through the windows, filling the house with warm light. But today, something felt different. I woke up feeling that my meeting with Mike yesterday had changed a lot. Thoughts about his proposal were swirling in my head from the moment I opened my eyes. I never imagined that my ideas could be useful for something as serious as his project, as well as the settlement. It was a strange but nice feeling to realize that someone sees you not just as an artist, but as a co-creator. I went out to the garden again. It always helped me sort out my thoughts. But today, there were too many thoughts in my head. I kept thinking that my little house was no longer just a result of survival, but the first step towards something bigger. After the morning work in the garden, I returned to my paintings. A few orders were pending, but thoughts about art took a back seat today. I caught myself looking at my work differently, as part of a larger project that could now become a reality. In the afternoon, I finally decided to call Mike. I didn't want to waste any time, and my excitement was growing. I dialed his number and took a deep breath. "Hi Mike, it's Mia. I thought we could discuss your project in more detail. How do you feel about meeting up today?" His voice sounded just as easy and relaxed as it did the day we met. "Hi Mio. Of course I was just thinking about that. How about I come over to you and we see what we can do with your little house? I think it could be a great example for future co-housing projects." My heart started racing. We agreed to meet in a couple of hours. I quickly tidied up the house and added a few details to make the place look cozier and ready for waiting. When Mike arrived, we walked around my property again. He listened carefully as I described my vision for the space, sharing his ideas and suggestions. We started discussing how to improve the house, add more windows, use natural materials, and make it more functional. It's amazing how easily everything came together. I felt that Mike was not just a professional, but someone who truly understands and appreciates what I'm creating. By the end of the day, we already had a plan. Not just for my house, but for several homes he wanted to build in the eco-village. It was incredible. I couldn't believe that my ideas would become part of something so big. As Mike was leaving, he smiled and said, "I think this will be the start of something bigger, Mia. We can make it happen. Thank you for your ideas and inspiration." I watched him leave, feeling a surge of energy and joy. Now my days were not just about surviving. They were becoming part of something bigger. Day 23? On the morning of day 23, I woke up with an amazing feeling of uplift. Everything I had built here from scratch started to take on a new meaning. Yesterday with Mike opened doors to something significant for me. My ideas, my little home, all of this could become part of a large-scale project. The sun had just started to rise when I stepped out onto the porch and took a deep breath of fresh air. Today I had to do something important, to bring to life the first ideas for improving the house that Mike and I discussed yesterday. I felt like I was on the brink of a new stage, where every step towards working on the house was not just an attempt to improve my living space, but a step towards realizing a big dream. First of all, I decided to work on the windows. Mike and I talked about needing to add more light to the house to make the space more open and filled with nature. I grabbed my tools and started to widen the windows, carefully so as not to damage the structure. It wasn't easy, but every step was rewarding. After a few hours of work, I stopped to take a look at the result. It became much brighter inside the house. Light flooded the room, and along with it came the feeling that I was really moving in the right direction. It was no longer just a house. It was a place that was becoming part of the project, part of the dream. Around lunchtime, I took a break and sat down to draw. Even though the house had been my main focus in recent days, creativity remained an essential part of my life. I kept drawing not just to make a living, but to survive. I kept drawing not just to make a living, but to express my emotions. Especially now, when there were so many of them. In the evening, I received a message from Mike. He sent photos of some drawings that he had already started working on for the eco-village. There was a small message below. "What do you think? It seems like we're moving in the right direction. I hope all is on track." I smiled. Everything was really coming together perfectly. I replied briefly. "Everything's great. My house already looks different. I'll show you the results soon." Before going to bed, I looked at the results of the day's work again. The house was gradually transforming, and so was I. Tomorrow is a new day, new tasks. Day 24. Waking up, I felt that nice kind of tiredness that comes after a day of productive work. The changes in the house yesterday made me happy, and I was full of energy to keep going. The windows I made bigger filled the house with light. and now the space felt more spacious and airy, but there was still a lot of work ahead. Today's plans included improving the interior and setting up functional areas, and I kept thinking about how to organize the space so that it would be not just cozy but also convenient for everyday life. Mike talked about how important it is to have harmony between beauty and practicality, and I completely agreed with that. To start with, I decided to work on the kitchen. I had a small table that I wanted to replace with something more comfortable. I grabbed my tools and got to work. I decided to make a wooden folding table so it wouldn't take up much space but could be expanded when needed. The process took almost the whole day, but when I finished, I was really happy with the result. The table was light, sturdy, and fit perfectly with the overall style of the house. Later in the evening, I got back to the garden. The plants needed constant care, and despite the changes in the house and new projects, this remained my only routine. In the garden bed, I caught myself thinking that my life had changed a lot in the past few days. Before, everything I did was just about survival. But now, thanks to Mike's app, I could see a future filled with possibilities. After working in the garden, I came back into the house, tired but satisfied. In the evening, I decided to spend some time drawing to relax. I took the canvas, and the lines seemed to come together on their own to create a new painting. I thought about how great it was that my ideas could go beyond just one painting or one house. Now I've become part of something bigger. Late in the evening, I got a message from Mike. How's it going with the house? I hope you're not too tired. By the way, I can stop by tomorrow to see how it turned out, and I'll bring some materials that might come in handy. I smiled. It was nice to know that he supports me and is ready to help. Come over, the house is almost ready. It's not at all the same as it was when you saw it last. I'd love to hear your thoughts. After finishing the conversation, I fell asleep feeling like every day brings something new and important. Tomorrow will be another step towards a big future. Day 25. Today was the day when Mike was supposed to come and check out the changes in my house. I woke up earlier than usual with a little excitement in my chest. I wanted everything to look perfect, not just for him, but for myself too, since I had done a huge amount of work over the past few days. First, I tidied up the house, quickly put away the tools I had used yesterday, checked how the new table looked, and organized everything in its place. The windows, which now flooded the room with light, made the space much cozier, and I felt that this house had truly become my little masterpiece. Stepping outside, I decided to tidy up the yard as well. Fortunately, the morning sun was gentle and it was easy to work. Everything looked just as I had dreamed. A house surrounded by greenery, a tidy garden, and a clear sense of progress at every step. Mike arrived closer to noon. I heard his footsteps as he approached the house. He looked just as relaxed, with a slight smile on his face, but I noticed a lively interest in his eyes. He was clearly happy to see how the house had changed. "Wow, Mia," he said, looking at the updated facade. "You've done an amazing job. This place is really coming to life right before my eyes." I smiled, feeling a rush of pride. We went into the house together and I showed him the changes inside. He was especially impressed with the new table. "This is genius," Mike said, pulling it apart and assessing the design. "Functionality and style in one. This is exactly what I envisioned for the future homes in the project." Then he started sharing his thoughts and suggestions. We talked about what other improvements we could make, like adding built-in shelves, creating a more convenient storage system, and maybe even expanding the kitchen. "By the way, I brought some materials that might come in handy," Mike said, opening the trunk of the car and pulling out boards and tools. "These materials are perfect for creating minimalist and eco-friendly elements. We can try to do something together." We got to work. Time flew by unnoticed as we discussed ideas and immediately brought them to life. Mike helped me install the new shelves, and I suggested a few creative ideas for decorating the walls. It wasn't just work, it was a collaborative creativity that brought us even closer together. Later in the evening, when we finished the main work, we sat on the porch enjoying the results. The house really looked completely different now. Bright, functional, and cozy. "You know, Mia, I'm glad we started this project," Mike said, looking at the house. "You really have a talent not just for art, but for creating a space that makes you want to live in it." I smiled, feeling that those words meant a lot to me. "Thank you, May. I am so happy to see how it all turns out. And thank you for your help. You inspired me a lot." We spent the rest of the evening talking, discussing future plans and ideas for the project. Mike, as always, was full of enthusiasm, and I felt that with him everything became possible. This day ended not just productively, but with a feeling that something even more grand was waiting for us ahead. Day 2656. It's been about 2 months since Mike invited me to join his project on building environmentally friendly houses. We worked with him as quite a team, and each new day brought a lot of challenges, but together we handled them. In the end, our collaboration turned into a true partnership where I discovered not only the world of architecture, but also new facets of my creativity. The first stage is design and planning. We started with the design. Mike used his knowledge and experience to create the blueprints, but I was also involved in the process. We discussed how to best integrate the houses into the surrounding nature to preserve its beauty and minimize the impact on the ecosystem. I shared my thoughts on how to create a comfortable and cozy space, and he explained how to make it practical and comfortable. We decided that each house would have open spaces, large windows to make the most of natural light and provide a breathtaking and stunning view of the surrounding nature. Eco-friendly and environmentally sustainable materials. Chose wood, straw, and other natural materials that not only harmonized with nature but also provided good insulation and aesthetically pleasing. Waste disposal system. Each house will be equipped with a rainwater collection system and composting toilets to minimize water usage and waste. The second stage of construction. Once the design was finished, we started the construction. It was physically demanding but incredibly engaging work. We gathered a team of local helpers and got to work. First, foundation. First, we laid the foundation, and this was one of the most difficult but important stages. Mike explained that the foundation needed to be strong enough to support the weight of the house and withstand weather changes. I helped to place the stones and level the surface. At one point, I even took on the responsibility of mixing the cement. Second, frame. After finishing the foundation, we started building the frame. We used recycled wood, which gave me a special sense of satisfaction. I knew that we were not just building, but also taking care of the environment. This process became a real test for my creativity. I was drawing on the walls during the construction to capture ideas for the future interior design. Third, roofs and walls. The next step was installing the roof. We chose straw mats and wooden boards to provide excellent insulation. I enjoyed working with straw because it was not only practical but also an eco-friendly and clean material. We treated the walls with clay, which added extra protection and insulation. Fourth, windows and doors. Big windows were one of the main features of our little houses, and they were designed to be beautifully airy and spacious. We used high insulation glass and wooden frames that we meticulously and lovingly crafted by hand ourselves. Every time we installed the windows, I felt like the house was filling up with light and life. Fifth, the interior. Once the frame and walls were ready, we started working on the interior design. I was in charge of the design and choosing the materials. Inside each house there was a lot of wood, natural fabrics, and green plants. I tried to make the house unique, adding bright details and artistic elements that told their own story about the place and its inhabitants. The third phase is landscaping and beautification. After finishing the construction, we started working on the landscaping. Each house was surrounded by a garden with a relaxation area, small vegetable patches, and even a pool that collected rainwater. I taught the locals how to take care of the plants so they could support the ecosystem around their homes themselves. With each completed house, I felt like I was getting closer to my dream of something bigger, a community of people living in harmony with nature and each other. Mike and I were working not just on the construction, but on creating a unique space where everyone could feel like they were part of something meaningful. By the end of 2 months, we had completed the construction of the first 5 houses. Each of them became not just a construction project, but truly a true work of art, indeed reflecting my vision and Mike's ideas. We held a small open house to demonstrate the results of our work, the locals and potential buyers. The feedback was amazing. People were impressed by how the eco-houses blended into the landscape and how conveniently they were organized inside. I felt proud to have contributed to such an important project. Now that the first phase was complete, a lot of new opportunities lay ahead of us. We started discussing plans for the future. dreaming of creating an entire eco-village where people could live, work, and create in harmony with nature. Every day, I became more absolutely and undoubtedly convinced that I made the right choice by choosing this life full of creativity and inspiration. Day 57. Today, when I woke up, my head was spinning with a lot of thoughts. I was lying in my cozy bed, enjoying the morning light that softly filled the room. Mike and I finished the first phase of building the eco-houses, and it seemed like it was opening new horizons, not just for our project, but for us as well. But in my heart, there's a question that's been bothering me for a long time. What's between us? Working side by side with Mike all these weeks, I watched him, his enthusiasm and passion for the work. His smile shone with sincerity, and I admired his determination. He was always there to help, but what I dreamed of between us never happened. Spending time together made me realize I loved him, a feeling that grew like my garden plants. I waited for him to take the first step, to admit there was more than friendship between us. I was waiting for him to take the first step, for him to admit that there was something more between us than just friendship. But with each new day spent together, I started to realize more and more that maybe he was comfortable with the boundaries of our friendship. And despite all these friendly gestures, he doesn't seem to want to cross that line. But today was different. I felt that while we were at the peak of our success with the project, it was the perfect moment to take action. I decided that I didn't want to wait any longer, that this moment shouldn't pass by. I gathered my thoughts, got dressed, and went outside, deciding to talk to Mike. It was fresh outside, and the sun's rays brought warmth. I headed to the place where we usually worked, and seeing him at work made my heart race. He was lost in his thoughts, sketching something in his notebook. But as I got closer, he looked up and smiled. "Hey there! How are you today?" he asked, giving me a boost of confidence. "Hey, Mike. I'm fine. Thought we could work a bit on the new project. I have some ideas that I'd like to discuss," I replied, trying to sound confident, even though inside I was all fluttery with nerves. We started discussing plans for the future, but as we talked, I realized that my thoughts weren't about the project. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts, and decided that it was time. "Mike, I've been thinking about us all the time." I started, knowing that this time I couldn't hold back. "All this time we've been working on the little houses, I've started to realize that our relationship means so much more to me than just friendship." He was looking at me intently, and I felt his eyes light up with interest. In that moment, I realized that I was ready to open my heart to him. I really love what we do, but I also realize that I don't want to limit myself to just work. I want there to be something more between us. I want to know. Do you feel the same way? I finished, feeling anxious inside about how he would react to my words. Mike paused for a moment, and I could see him processing what he had just heard. It was a tense silence in the air that felt seemingly like an eternity, and yet at that moment suddenly hope blossomed deep in my heart. Finally he said softly, "Mia, I didn't know how you felt. You're really important to me, and our friendship means a lot. But I'm really busy with a project right now, and I want it to succeed. Let's wait a bit before having this conversation so we don't get distracted from work." There was uncertainty in his voice, and I realized that he wasn't rejecting my feelings, but he wasn't ready to open up right away either. I felt a slight uncertainty, but at the same time, hope for the future. Day 58. Today I woke up with a clear intention. I need a day off. The last few weeks have been filled with work, building, and spending time with Mike, and I felt it was time to pause and sort out my feelings. I knew that there was something more happening between us than just friendship, but fear and uncertainty were holding me back from accepting it. I took a deep breath and decided that the best way to clear my thoughts was to spend the day alone with myself. I made a cup of fragrant coffee and stepped outside. The morning was so quiet and peaceful, and I allowed myself to enjoy the moment, listening to the sounds of nature around me. First, I headed to my garden. Working with plants always made me feel at home. It was as if nature itself was helping me find the answers to the questions that were bothering me. I picked some fresh vegetables, working my hands in the soil, and thought about my feelings for Mike. He became more than just a friend to me. He became someone much more Then I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. I walked along the river, enjoying its flow and the peaceful atmosphere. I had a lot of thoughts swirling in my head about what I really needed. I realized that I want our relationship to develop, but I was also afraid that it might change something we already have. After the walk, I found a cozy spot with a view of the sunset and sat down on the grass. I took out my notebook and started writing down my thoughts. The words seemed to flow onto the paper by themselves about my feelings, my fears, and how important it is to be honest with myself. At that moment, I realized that I was ready to take a step forward, but I needed to find the right way to share my feelings with Mike. When I got home, I decided to do something special for myself. I made dinner, turned on my favorite music, and threw a little celebration for myself. It was a way to celebrate that I was starting to understand myself and my desires. When it got dark, I sat on the couch, looked at the photos from our project, and felt a sense of confidence growing inside me. I realized that if I want something more to happen between us, I need to be open and honest. Decided to open my heart to Mike when ready. Now, in my silent home, I felt I was moving forward. But right now, sitting in the silence of my home, I felt like I was taking a step in the right direction. I took my phone and sent him a message to let him know that everything was okay and that I was ready to talk about some things when he was free. At that moment, I felt like I was finally starting to understand myself and what I really needed. Day 59. The morning started with the usual routine. Breakfast, gathering tools, and getting ready for another workday. Mike and I agreed to meet at the site to discuss the next stage of building the eco house. I arrived a little earlier to set up the meeting place, check the blueprints, and take another look at the houses that had already been built. Mike showed up right on time as always, with a friendly smile on his face, polite and professional. He immediately started discussing the project details, how to best arrange the interior, and what materials to use for the finishing. We spent the whole day talking about the project, discussing details and making plans for the future. He was extremely polite, even cracking jokes sometimes to lighten the work atmosphere. But all of this stayed within the bounds of business communication. There was no hint of anything more, no glance, no phrase that could show that our feelings had changed. He talked about deadlines, plans, and how important it was to organize the process properly. It seemed like the conversations about our personal relationship, which had been so on my mind in recent days, had vanished as if they never existed. The day flew by unnoticed, but something inside me kept pulling me back to those thoughts I couldn't let go of. Every time Mike smiled, I secretly hoped and wondered if there was a deeper meaning behind his words. I often found myself gazing intently at him longer than necessary again, trying to read his mood. But he was focused on work, just like before. As the day came to an end, we packed up our things and went our separate ways as usual. No unnecessary words, just formalities. I came home feeling a bit empty. Thoughts about Mike kept spinning in my head over and over. Why doesn't anything change? Maybe I've just been wrong all this time, hoping for something more. And already in bed, I was thinking about my thoughts again. I had this sensation that if I didn't somehow take a step forward, I would remain in ignorance. But the fear of rejection held me back from acting. Tomorrow will be a new day, and I'll see him again. But will anything change? Day 60. Today I woke up with a heavy heart. It's been over 2 months since Mike and I met. I waited too long for him to say something or take a step forward on his own, but nothing changed all this time. The internal tension was building day by day, and I realized I couldn't take it anymore. Today I have to make him answer my questions so I can finally understand if we have a future. We met again at the site, as usual, to continue working on the project. Everything went according to the usual scenario. Discussion of plans, light jokes, professional conversations. But inside me, there were too many emotions that I could no longer hide. When the work was finished, I took a deep breath and made up my mind. We sat down on the edge of the construction site, and I finally turned to him. Mike, we need to talk. I can't wait any longer and be tormented by doubts. It's been a long time, and I need to know, do you feel anything for me? Do you want there to be something more between us? His face changed, the smile disappeared, and in its place came seriousness. He instantly looked down, as if searching for the right words. Then, looking up, Mike spoke. But his words hit me harder than I could have ever expected. Mia, I never promised you anything but just friendship. I've always valued you as a person and respect your work. But there has always been only friendship between us. I can't give you what you might be hoping for. I have a family, and my life has long been occupied by these circumstances. I don't want you to feel hurt or rejected. It's important for me that we keep working together because you really matter for this project and to me as a friend. But there's no question of a romantic relationship. Those words tore me apart inside. Everything I had been truly holding inside for these months turned out to be a complete illusion. I sat in utter silence, indeed trying to deeply process his unexpected answer. I expected different outcomes, but not this one. He continued, "Please, I sincerely and humbly beg you, don't be mad at me. I truly and deeply respect you very much, and it is incredibly and vitally important to me that we remain on good terms and continue working on the project together. I really and sincerely don't want to lose you as someone who has brought so much value to this project." He spoke calmly and sincerely, but it didn't ease the pain inside me. Mike wasn't mean or uncaring, but everything he said dashed my hopes. I stared off to the side for a long time, trying to hold myself together. "I understand," I finally replied. "That's all I wanted to know." We parted at the same place where we usually discussed work matters, but this time I left with a feeling of emptiness. Mike asked me not to be mad, and maybe I wasn't angry with him, but my heart was broken. I came home feeling like my life had changed drastically. Now I had to make a decision. Should I keep working with him or move on? 61 days. Or move on, leaving this project and these feelings behind. 61 days. Today I woke up feeling heavy, not just in my body, but in my soul. Yesterday's conversation with Mike, his words, they echoed in my head, not letting me find peace. I couldn't believe that all my hopes had collapsed so quickly and unexpectedly. My heart hurt so much that the thought of seeing Mike again was unbearable. Working with him, knowing that nothing will happen between us, that he only sees me as a friend, felt impossible. I decided that I wouldn't go to work today. I just can't. My mental state is so low that I couldn't get out of bed or even get myself together. I picked up my phone and sent Mike a message. "Hey Mike, it seems like I got sick. A runny nose, a cough, you know how it is. I need some time to recover, so I won't be able to come in today. But don't worry, I'll be back on my feet soon." I tried to make the message light and playful, as if it really was just a cold. I wanted him to think I was okay so that no one reading that message would guess what was really behind it. At that moment, it felt easier than telling the truth about my feelings. After I sent the message, I put my phone on the nightstand and wrapped myself in a blanket. All I wanted was to hide from the world, from my pain, from myself. My head was full of thoughts about how to deal with this, how to move forward from here. Every time I remembered yesterday's conversation, my heart would start racing and tears would well up in my eyes. I lay like that all day, getting up occasionally to drink some water or mindlessly make myself some tea. But food and everything else felt pointless. I felt like I was in a vacuum, with no thoughts or desires, just this heaviness inside, spinning in my head with the question of how I could have been so wrong, why I let myself fall in love with someone who was never available to me. But what truly scared me the most was that I would absolutely have to see him again, work together as if nothing had indeed happened, as if I wasn't feeling this pain. Just the thought of having to smile again and pretend that everything was okay made me shiver. By evening I picked up my phone again, but there were no new messages from Mike. Maybe he was just too busy, or maybe he just didn't know what to say. I wanted to believe that he cared about me, even just a little, but even that felt so far away. I wrapped myself in the blanket again, trying to find even a drop of comfort in the silence and solitude. Day 68. A whole week went by, and I was still lying in my bed, sunk in apathy. I wasn't taking care of myself, I wasn't washing, I wasn't really eating. All this chaos inside me was growing like a weed, overshadowing everything that used to matter to me. The home I loved so much was starting to feel like a cage. I felt like I was falling to the very bottom, just a little longer, and I would have stayed there forever. Every day blended into an endless series of monotonous hours. I didn't want to think, I didn't want to feel. All that was left was the pain. I was staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how I got to this point. How could I let myself fall apart because of one person? And suddenly something inside me changed. A deep sense of self-pity that wrapped around me like a fog suddenly gave way to a bright, flaring anger. This anger awakened unexpectedly, like lightning tearing through a dark sky. I was furious at Mike, at myself, at the fact that I let these emotions take over. How could he? I put so much into this project, into our relationship, even if it was one-sided. I tried. I worked day and night, believing that there could be something more between us. And now I look at myself in the mirror and don't recognize the woman I was just a few weeks ago. I sat on the bed and suddenly realized that I couldn't live like this anymore. This guy, Mike, isn't worth me continuing to destroy myself. He turned me into a shadow of myself, and I have realized that I let him do it completely and utterly. But that was wrong. It needed to change. To my core, a plan started to form inside me. It was anger mixed with determination, something more than just a desire to fix my life. I decided that he wouldn't get off that easily. I won't let him walk away, leaving me at rock bottom. I'll get revenge for everything he's done and everything I've lost. Anger gives me strength. I'll use that strength to come back stronger. My comeback will be more than a triumph. Day 69. But now I knew my comeback would be more than just a triumph. It would be something bigger. Day 69. The morning started just like the previous days, a feeling of emptiness inside. I still couldn't find the strength to get back to a normal life. And then a message from Mike came through on my phone. "Hey girl, how are you doing? Maybe you need something? How do you feel when you're planning to go back to work?" Reading those words, I felt a new surge of anger. His indifferent tone, as if nothing had happened, as if everything was fine. It was like a reminder of how wrong I had been about him. Something clicked inside me, and I decided to make my move. I grabbed my phone and without really thinking typed a reply. "Hey Mike, I got a great job offer abroad and I accepted it. I won't be able to keep working on our project anymore. Good luck to you." The message was cold and detached, just the way I wanted it to be. I wanted him to feel the pain I had been going through all these days. And maybe something else, the feeling of loss that he probably didn't expect. After sending the message, I put my phone down and stared at it all day, waiting for a reply, but all I got was silence. The hours dragged on slowly, and Mike still hadn't texted or called. The day was almost over, and it was getting dark outside. I was ready to sink into my gloom when I heard a knock at the door. I opened the door. It was Mike, but not the calm and friendly person I was used to seeing. He looked very serious, and there was anger flashing in his eyes. "Mia," he started in a stern tone, "I know you don't have any proposal. I know it's because of your feelings for me that you're quitting our project. Mia, that's not how professionals act." Mike didn't hide his fury. I had never seen him so angry before. He kept talking, almost shouting, letting out everything that had built up inside him. "You can't just throw it all away like that. We've achieved so much together. Are you really ready to give up everything we've built because of some feelings? Look back and see how much we've done." He kept talking and talking, his words getting louder and sharper. He seemed ready to tear apart this moment with his anger, but I wasn't listening to him. I had long been lost in my thoughts. His shouts didn't reach me. It all felt like background noise, something distant, insignificant. He kept going. "Hey, why are you silent? Are you even listening to me?" I took a deep breath, looked up and met his gaze. My answer was simple and without any extra words. I just slammed the door in his face. I stood by the door, leaning against it, while Mike continued to stand outside. His rage felt so distant, while my pain was so close. I couldn't be with him. I couldn't work next to him when my heart was screaming for him. Day 99. It's been a month since the last conversation with Mike. Time seemed to stand still for me. I wasn't working anymore. I didn't even try to find motivation. My existence boiled down to simple, monotonous actions. Sometimes I would draw, sometimes I tended to the garden, walked in the park, but it was all mechanical, without any emotions, without a real desire to do anything. Life kept passing me by, and I just watched it from the sidelines. The pain didn't go away. It settled deep inside and became a part of me. Every day felt like the one before, as if the world was stuck in one place. Neither I nor he could move forward. But despite all this apathy, deep inside, a volcano of anger and disappointment was boiling. That evening, I was walking around the city again. Many led me to the eco-homes that Mike and I built together. I froze in place, as if I had come face to face with a ghost from the past. Memories washed over me, one after another. All our discussions, ideas, hopes and dreams, it all completely crumbled the moment Mike pushed me away from me, choosing his ideal family happiness. And now I saw him from a distance. He was sitting by one of the houses with his family, laughing. And they were grilling kebabs. He looked so happy and full of joy. He was happy. He moved on. And what about me? I was stuck in these memories, like in a trap. I looked at Mike and his family, and I was overwhelmed with pain mixed with rage. How could he move on when everything between us was left unresolved, unfinished? When they started getting ready to go home, I froze in the shadows. For some reason, they didn't want to stay the night, and that felt strange. They got into the car, laughing, saying goodbye to this place as if nothing had happened here. Suddenly, I noticed that they had left the campfire burning, even though it should have been put out. And then a thought popped into my head, like a spark. I can set everything up to make it look like an accident. Mike left the campfire, the fire will flare up, the cabins will burn down, and he will be to blame. This image struck me like lightning. I didn't even fully realize what I was doing, as if a dark force inside me had taken over. I stepped closer, feeling the flames of the fire enchanting me. It wasn't me, it was my pain, my deep-seated hurt, my overwhelming frustration, and my anger that eventually and inevitably broke free. I just added a little kindling to the fire and slipped back into the shadows, watching as the flames began to grow, at first slowly, then faster and faster. Watching the fire start to spread, at first slowly, then faster. I stood there, feeling a strange sense of relief as the cabins were engulfed in flames one by one. Along with those cabins, my resentments and my memories of Mike burned away. The fire consumed everything, and I finally realized that I needed to burn everything that connected me to the past. When the fire consumed the last little house, I returned to my home. I walked up to the door, slowly opened it, and went into the empty rooms. They reminded me of everything that I had gone through in my life and all the memories associated with it. And then I decided this house should burn too. I set my house on fire and stepped outside, watching as the flames consumed it. Everything burned. All my grievances, all the memories, all the moments connected to Mike. Gone in the fire, all that's left is ash and emptiness. The 100th day, I'm standing on the empty lot. Everything is gone, my home, eco houses, everything from the past. In this place, there's only silence and peace now. It's all over. I look at this empty lot and there's no more ick in my chest. All the grievances, pain and disappointments are left behind. The fire destroyed not just the houses, but everything that kept me tied to that past. Now I have a clean slate, freedom. This isn't the end, it's the beginning of a new life. I don't know what will happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I feel ready to move forward. Well friends, that's the end of my 100 days of hardcore story. If you liked it and want to see more, write in the comments, I want more. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time, bye bye.